Everyone laughed except me. Dad raised his glass and said, "I'm proud of all my children except the loser sitting at the table." The room roared. My brother smirked. My sister rolled her eyes at me. I stood up, calm. My hands didn't shake this time. I pulled out the folded paper, placed it in front of him, and whispered, "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." Then I grabbed the keys to the luxury car I gave him and walked out. He hadn't read it yet. Subscribe now for more true stories that hit deep and twist hard. They've always seen me as the weird one. While my brother Nathan was scoring internships at major banks and my sister Sienna was acing her law school exams, I was the one in the corner. Always tapping on a dusty old laptop. Always working on something, though no one ever cared to ask what. I remember once during a family barbecue, Uncle Rick pulled me aside and said, "Elena, you're too smart to be wasting time on silly internet games. When will you get a real job?" I just smiled and said, "I'm building something." He laughed so hard he spilled his beer. The truth is, I never fit into their world. Dad believed in titles, in suits, in status. If you weren't walking into a firm with your chin up and a nameplate on your office door, you were nothing. Nathan had that. Sienna too. I didn't. I tried, at first. I went to college like they wanted. I studied computer science, but I hated the lectures, the group assignments, the robotic rules. I wanted freedom to create, to think, to fail, and try again without judgment. So I dropped out. The news hit like a scandal. Dad didn't speak to me for 2 months. Mom begged me to apologize. Sienna called me the dropout. Nathan just smiled like he'd expected it all along. But none of them knew I'd already started freelancing. I was coding back-end systems for small startups, building user interfaces, doing security audits. Quietly, behind my bedroom door. My first year, I made less than minimum wage. My second year, I started gaining traction. I reinvested every cent. Ate ramen, skipped outings, cried some nights, but I never stopped. I believed in what I was building, but no one believed in me. Every family dinner was the same. "Your brother just got promoted." "Sienna's doing her internship at the state courthouse." And then the silence. No one asked me what I was doing. Or worse, they'd ask in that fake curious tone, "So, still that clicking on your computer all day?" Then they'd laugh. Even Mom. Dad once pulled me aside and said, "You've got 1 more year to figure it out, Elena. After that, I'm cutting you off." The thing is, I'd already cut them off, they just didn't know. I never took their money. I lived frugally. Taught myself business strategy on YouTube. Learned to negotiate contracts, pitch ideas, read term sheets. I made mistakes, but I kept all the receipts. Then came the moment everything changed. I built an app, a tool for small business owners to manage their operations with AI support. No ads, no fluff, just pure utility. I called it Nura, short for Nurture. It quietly launched on Product Hunt, and then it exploded. Investors reached out, tech blogs featured it. Suddenly, users from over 20 countries were downloading Nura every day. I had offers on the table from 3 venture capital firms before my coffee even cooled that week. I sat in the same kitchen Dad once scolded me in, staring at the emails. One of the offers read, "We're ready to lead your Series A with a 2.5 million check. Let's talk." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just exhaled. Years of quiet work had finally spoken louder than their words. But I told no one in the family. I didn't want their fake praise. I wanted to show them, not tell them. On my own terms, in my own time. So I waited. I let them keep calling me the family's biggest failure. I let Dad ignore me at parties, even as I paid off the last of Grandma Ruth's hospital bills. I let Nathan brag about his bonuses while I closed deals bigger than his entire salary. I let Sienna post selfies at courthouses while I negotiated an acquisition offer from an international firm. It wasn't pride, it was peace. Because sometimes, silence is the loudest statement you can make. And as I sat at that Father's Day dinner, watching them toast each other like I didn't exist, I knew something they didn't. The loser at the table was about to flip the whole story. Sometimes the deepest cuts don't come from strangers. They come from the people who share your last name. After Nura took off, I thought things would change, at least a little. Not because I wanted applause or some big family celebration. Just maybe respect. Maybe a moment where Dad would finally look me in the eyes and say, "I was wrong about you." But instead, things got worse. At Nathan's birthday dinner, I showed up in a simple dress. Not designer, just neat. I brought a gift, a limited edition watch he once said he liked. I had it shipped from Italy. He unwrapped it and laughed. "Wow, this must have cost a fortune. Did you get a job at Amazon or something?" Everyone laughed. Even Mom. Sienna chimed in, "You probably found a sugar daddy online." More laughter. I smiled and said nothing. Not because it didn't hurt, but because the version of me they still saw was so small, so outdated. Explaining myself would be like arguing with ghosts. But that night after dessert, I went to the bathroom and overheard Dad talking to a guest. "She's still trying to find herself," he said, like I wasn't 3 feet away. "Some kids just take longer or never arrive." That one stung. I didn't say anything. I walked past them, got in my car, the one I paid for in full, and drove home. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I just sat on my couch, stared at the ceiling, and told myself, this is temporary. Still, they kept treating me like I was the family disappointment. At Uncle Rick's New Year's party, he roasted everyone, then got to me and said, "Elena's New Year's resolution should be to finally get a LinkedIn profile." Everyone cracked up. I forced a laugh. But deep inside, I was done letting their words shape my worth. I started distancing myself, skipping family events unless absolutely necessary. I focused on scaling Nura, hiring developers, optimizing the platform, expanding to new markets. My app was now helping thousands of small businesses around the world. But to my family, I was still just Elena. Still, I hoped. A small part of me still wished one of them would look past the surface. That moment never came. One day I was sitting in the living room, helping Grandma Ruth set up her new tablet. I'd gotten it for her birthday, when Sienna walked in. She scoffed, "Oh wow, you finally doing something useful?" Before I could respond, Grandma Ruth gently touched my arm and whispered, "They don't see you yet, baby. But one day, they'll have to." I nodded. She always knew how to say the right thing. But the final straw came a few weeks before Father's Day. Mom asked me to come by for a small family lunch. I agreed, thinking it'd just be us. I wore jeans and a sweater, nothing fancy. But when I arrived, the house was packed. Apparently, it was a surprise networking brunch for Nathan's promotion. I stood there, surrounded by suits, heels, and champagne glasses. Mom barely introduced me. Dad gave me a nod. Sienna actually said, "Try not to embarrass us this time." I bit my tongue so hard it almost bled. Later, someone tapped my shoulder. It was one of Nathan's friends. He looked polite, but puzzled. "Sorry, you're—" he asked. "Elena," I replied. "Oh, the sister who does tech stuff, right? They said you live in your laptop." He laughed. I didn't. That night, I drove straight home and didn't sleep. I sat at my desk, turned on the lamp, and opened a blank document. Title, Father's Day Gift. Confidential. I printed it, folded it neatly, and placed it in an envelope. They wanted to laugh? Let them. But they'd never laugh at me again. They saw a girl with a laptop. I saw a future they couldn't even imagine. After every insult, every awkward silence at the dinner table, I'd go home, open my laptop, and build. Not just code. I was building freedom, brick by brick. I didn't need their praise. I needed progress. My days were simple. Wake up, check analytics. Code. Send emails to users asking for feedback. Tweak UI designs. Test bugs. Eat toast. Code more. Sleep. Repeat. My circle was small. 2 other remote developers and a UX designer from Sweden. We worked from different time zones, but we had one vision: make small business tools smarter, simpler, and affordable. We called it Nura. It wasn't flashy. It didn't shout like most startups with bold ads and viral gimmicks. Nura just worked. It helped a bakery in Morocco track their orders, a yoga instructor in Canada manage her schedule, and a small mechanic shop in Lagos streamline inventory. I didn't need it to be loud. I needed it to matter. The breakthrough came on a rainy Thursday. We'd just pushed an update that allowed users to connect Nura with WhatsApp and get real-time updates. I logged off, went to wash dishes, and came back to over 400 new user signups. I hit refresh. It became 800, then 1,200. What happened? Turns out, a popular YouTuber who teaches small businesses had stumbled upon Nura and made a review video. She called it the smartest little app no one's talking about. That same night, my inbox flooded with investor interest. My chest tightened. I dreamed of this moment, but I didn't expect it to come so fast. I called my designer, Emil, at 2 a.m. "Wake up," I said, laughing. "We just hit 30,000 users." He screamed. I cried. Not out of fear, but relief. Still, I told no one in my family. They were too busy praising Nathan's new apartment and Sienna's internship with a judge. Meanwhile, I quietly opened a business account under Nura Technologies Limited. I registered trademarks, hired legal consultants, and signed our first partnership deal. I bought my first car, cash. Nothing too flashy, just sleek and dependable. Then I did something strange. I sent Dad a message. "Hey, Dad, would you like a new car for Father's Day? I've been saving up. No strings attached." He replied in minutes. "If you're serious, I've always liked the Lexus GX, but you don't have to show off, Elena." Show off? I laughed. He thought this was about appearances. He didn't know I'd already wired the full payment to the dealership, didn't know the car would be registered in my name, but with his initials stitched into the seats. He didn't know it wasn't just a gift. It was a setup, not for revenge, for revelation. Mom called the next day. "Your dad told me about the car. That was really generous of you, sweetheart." "Yeah," I said. "It's time he gets something back." I could hear the shift in her tone. "You know, your father still worries about you. He just wants to see you stable." "I am, Mom," I said softly. "I've been stable for a while now." But stability isn't what they respect. They respect spectacle. They respect power. So I started preparing the paper. A single sheet, neatly printed, no fluff, just facts. Ownership breakdown of Nura Technologies, revenue reports, my status as CEO. The investment account I used to anonymously inject capital into Carter Finance Group, Dad's firm, when they were struggling last year. Because yes, the loser at the table had been the one saving their legacy behind the scenes. I planned it like a presentation, but made it feel like a personal letter. It ended with, "This is not for validation. This is not for revenge. This is just the truth. You may not be proud of me, Dad, but I'm finally proud of me." Then I placed it inside a silver envelope, sealed it, and tucked it into my purse. I had everything ready: the car, the paper, the moment. Now, all I had to do was wait for Father's Day. Father's Day arrived with sunshine, loud music, and the smell of grilled chicken. Mom texted me early. "Don't be late. Your father is excited. Wear something nice." I stared at that message longer than I should have. It sounded so normal, so polite, as if we hadn't just spent years pretending I didn't exist unless someone needed a tech fix or a ride to the airport. Still, I smiled, closed my laptop, and got dressed. I wore a simple navy blue dress and white sneakers. No makeup, no jewelry. I didn't need to prove anything with looks. Everything I needed was already sitting outside. A brand new Lexus GX, polished, spotless, with the keys in my purse and the paperwork in my name. When I pulled into the driveway, the reactions were instant. Sienna stepped outside and raised an eyebrow. "Whose car is that?" I smiled. "A friend's." She scoffed. "A guy friend, I assume." I ignored the jab. Inside, the family was already buzzing. Nathan was showing Dad something on his iPad. Mom was arranging flowers. Uncle Rick was talking too loud, as always. No one noticed I'd arrived until Grandma Ruth waved from the couch and said, "There's my girl." I hugged her gently. "You look beautiful, Grandma." She whispered, "Is today the day?" I smiled and nodded. Yes. An hour later, lunch was served. We sat around the long dining table, filled with laughter and inside jokes, none of which included me. Nathan had brought a custom whiskey set for Dad. Sienna gave him a signed photo from a judge she interned with. They were already basking in compliments before I even reached into my bag. Then I stood up. "Dad," I said, holding out a small box. "Happy Father's Day." He blinked, surprised. "You got me something?" I handed him the keys. At first, he laughed, thinking it was a prank. "What is this for? A model car?" "No," I replied, calm. "Your new Lexus GX, parked outside. It's yours." The room went silent. Then Uncle Rick snorted. "You sure it's not leased in someone else's name?" Sienna added, "Wow, what a flex. That's bold for someone who still lives in a rented apartment." Dad narrowed his eyes, unsure whether to be grateful or suspicious. "You really bought me a car?" I nodded. "Paid in full." He looked outside. His face shifted, somewhere between shock and discomfort. But before he could respond, Mom interrupted. "That's generous, Elena. Where did you get that kind of money?" I sat back down and said nothing. I knew they weren't asking because they were impressed. They were asking because they didn't believe me. We finished lunch, but the air felt tight, like everyone was waiting for me to slip up, to say I got a loan, or help, or lied. But I didn't. Later that evening, Dad walked me outside. The Lexus sat in the driveway, catching sunlight like it belonged in a showroom. He circled it slowly, trailing his fingers along the door handle. "I didn't know you were doing that well," he said finally. "I am," I replied simply. He opened the driver's side door and sat inside. "This is impressive." And for a second, I thought that was it. Maybe this was the turning point. Maybe he'd finally ask me what I actually did. Maybe he'd say, "Tell me more." But instead, he looked up at me and said, "You know, if you're dating someone wealthy, just be careful. Money makes people fake things." The words sliced through me. Even now, he couldn't imagine I'd earned this myself, not his daughter, not the loser at the table. I smiled, but inside something hardened. Something finally snapped into place. "Thanks, Dad," I said quietly. "I'll remember that." Then I walked back inside, reached into my purse, and double-checked that the envelope was still there, sealed, waiting. They thought the car was the gift, but the real gift was coming. And when he opened that paper, everything would... The dining table was half cleared, but no one had left. The room still buzzed with casual chatter, the clink of glasses, and shallow laughter. I sat at the far end, quiet as always, watching them pass around wine like nothing had changed. But something had. I had. I'd done everything right, given a thoughtful gift, been polite, respectful, calm. Still, their reaction had been the same: suspicion, sarcasm, disbelief. Even after handing my father the keys to a brand new luxury car, he still couldn't look at me without wondering, whose money did she use? So now, it was time. I reached into my purse, pulled out the silver envelope, and placed it gently on the table. Right in front of him. Dad looked up, confused. "What's this?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't stand. I just said, "For you, Dad. Happy Father's Day." The room stilled. Eyes flicked from the envelope to me and back again. He hesitated, fingers hovering over the flap. "What is this supposed to be?" "Just something I thought you should see." Sienna whispered something to Nathan, and he smirked. Uncle Rick muttered, "Must be one of those emotional letters or poems." I said nothing. I didn't need to explain anything. Dad finally opened the envelope and pulled out the document. 1 page, crisp, clean, no fluff. His eyes began to scan. At first, nothing changed, just his usual look of calculation. Then, something shifted. His forehead creased. His lips parted slightly. He read faster, then slower, then again. By the third line, he wasn't blinking. "What is this?" he asked, voice suddenly dry. The room had gone silent. He looked up at me, stunned. You own Neurotechnologies?" I nodded once. "But we've been using that system at the firm for months. You're the CEO?" "Founder and CEO," I corrected softly. He looked back at the paper. "This says you injected capital into Carter Finance months ago." "That's right," I replied. "Your firm was flagged by the bank. You were about to lose a major client. I invested anonymously to keep it afloat." Nathan's jaw dropped. "Wait, what? You're the investor?" Sienna stared at me like she'd just seen a ghost. Dad's hands trembled slightly as he reread the bottom of the page. "I didn't want thanks. I didn't need validation. I just wanted peace. But peace requires truth." Elena Carter. He dropped the paper like it burned. "You're joking," Uncle Rick muttered. "You mean she's been funding this family's business and nobody knew?" I didn't speak. I didn't need to. The truth had already landed like thunder. Dad tried to regain composure. "Why didn't you say anything earlier?" I tilted my head. Would it have mattered? No one answered. Mom finally whispered, "Elena, we had no idea." I looked at her, not angry, just tired. That's the problem. No one ever asked. Grandma Ruth sat smiling gently, her eyes wet with quiet pride. She reached for my hand under the table and squeezed it. I squeezed back. Then I stood up, reached into my purse one last time and held up a second item, the spare key to the Lexus. "I'll be taking the car back now," I said softly. Dad's face went pale. "What?" "It was never really for you," I said. "It was a gesture. A chance for you to see me differently, but you still couldn't. So it's going back where it belongs, with me." I walked outside before anyone could respond. The door clicked behind me, and the air felt lighter. I slid into the driver's seat, closed the door, and turned the key. The engine purred to life. Inside, I could see movement, people standing, voices rising, confusion, regret, disbelief. But none of it reached me. Not anymore. I wasn't the loser at the table. I was the one who built the table, and from now on, I chose who got a seat at it. I didn't look back as I drove off. Not even once. The sun was beginning to set, casting gold across the pavement, as if even the sky knew a chapter had ended. I kept my grip on the wheel steady, the Lexus humming beneath me like it finally belonged where it should have been all along. I didn't have music playing, I didn't need it. The only sound I needed was the quiet, finally, peaceful, absence of their voices in my ears. No more jabs, no more dismissive laughs, no more questioning glances across the dinner table like I didn't measure up. I parked in front of my building, turned off the engine, and just sat there. I thought I'd feel satisfied, but all I felt was clarity. This wasn't revenge. It wasn't a victory lap. It was just truth breaking free after years of being buried under silence. I went upstairs, took off my shoes, and curled up on the couch. My phone buzzed almost immediately. First, a missed call from Dad. Then another. Then a text from Mom. "Please call your father, he's overwhelmed." Then Sienna. "Why didn't you tell us? I feel so stupid." Then Nathan. "We need to talk. ASAP." I didn't respond. Not yet. Let them sit in the silence I lived in for years. Instead, I opened my laptop. Notifications were exploding. Another business journal had just posted about Neura's rising influence in global small businesses. A major software company had followed our official page. The irony hit me hard. While my own family was laughing at me over roast chicken, the outside world had been quietly watching me build an empire. Later that night, someone knocked on my door. Light but urgent. I peeked through the peephole. Dad. I stood there, staring at him through the glass. He looked older, smaller, like someone who had finally realized the mirror he'd been looking into all these years was cracked. I didn't open the door. Not yet. The next morning, the story was already spreading. A former employee of Carter Finance had seen my name on a leaked investor list and tweeted it. Wait, the girl everyone said was a failure is the one who saved the company? I work there. This is wild. Within hours, blogs picked it up. Then, industry pages. Someone dug up a photo of me from 3 years ago in a hoodie at a tech meetup and compared it to my latest keynote appearance in San Francisco. The posts went viral. My inbox filled with interview requests, podcast invites, and press inquiries. Everyone wanted to hear from the quiet genius behind Nura. But I didn't feel like a genius. I just felt awake. That afternoon, I got another message from Mom. Your father is devastated. Please come home. Just talk to him. Home? I laughed to myself. That house never felt like home. Not when every room echoed with the sound of who I wasn't allowed to be. Later, Sienna sent a voice note. Elena, I didn't know. I was wrong. We were all wrong. I'm sorry. She sounded sincere, nervous, maybe even ashamed. Nathan messaged too. He didn't apologize. He asked for a meeting. Maybe there's a way we could collaborate. Bring your tools into our new client system. I think there's potential. Even now, he couldn't just say, I'm proud of you. But I wasn't angry. I was just done chasing their approval. That night, I sat in front of my window and watched the city move. Horns, lights, motion. So many people out there building quietly like I had, getting overlooked, underestimated, dismissed. But one day they'd walk into a room and everyone would have to turn, just like they turned when Dad opened that paper. The girl they called a failure wasn't just standing, she was rising. They asked me to come back. Not for dinner, not for an apology, for a family meeting. Mom phrased it gently in her message. Just come listen, that's all. He's different now. I didn't say yes right away. I waited a day, then another. Not to be petty, but because I needed to be sure I was walking in there as me, not the version of me they used to laugh at. When I finally pulled into the driveway, I noticed something strange. For the first time ever, nobody came outside. No fake smiles, no forced hugs, just silence. I walked into the living room, and they were all there. Mom, Nathan, Sienna, Uncle Rick, and Dad. No food, no music, just an open space and uncomfortable faces. Grandma Ruth sat on her usual chair, hands folded neatly in her lap. When our eyes met, she gave me a slow, proud nod. Dad stood up. I want to start, he said, voice low, before anyone says anything. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the paper. That paper. I've read this over 100 times, he began. And every time I do, I realize how blind I've been. He looked at me, really looked for once. I thought success had to look a certain way. Office, suit, title. You didn't fit that mold, so I ignored everything else. I was wrong. I said nothing. He stepped closer. I let pride stop me from seeing who you were, and I laughed at the daughter who ended up saving the very thing I built my identity on. I'm sorry, Elena. His voice cracked. I'm truly sorry. I waited. Sienna was next. I was jealous, she admitted. Not just of what you built, but how you did it quietly. I thought if I was loud enough, I could cover up how scared I was to ever fail. But you failed 100 times and still kept going. That's real strength. Nathan nodded. I was a jerk. I assumed I had it all figured out. Turns out, I've been working twice as hard to be half as free. Uncle Rick cleared his throat. I've made more jokes than I can count, and I guess none of them were ever funny. Sorry, kid. I sat down slowly, letting the silence stretch. Then I said, You didn't just hurt me by ignoring what I built. You hurt me by treating me like my worth was tied to your approval. Mom started to cry. You were never a failure, Elena. I'm so sorry for not defending you. I looked at her, and this time I believed her. But I didn't come for tears. I came for truth. I'm not angry anymore, I said softly. I just needed to stop waiting for your permission to be proud of myself. They all nodded, but I wasn't done. I don't need a seat at this table, I continued. Not unless it comes with respect. Not just now that you see my worth, but for who I was before the app. The girl in the hoodie? The loser you didn't understand. Dad lowered his head. You have that respect, Elena. From me. From all of us. There was a long pause. Then Grandma Ruth stood up, slowly, using her cane, and walked over to me. She hugged me tight. You were never the loser, she whispered in my ear. You were the storm we didn't see coming. I smiled, finally letting out a breath I'd held for years. It wasn't just about proving them wrong. It was about proving to myself that I never needed to shrink to be accepted. I never had to be loud to be powerful. I just had to be me, unapologetically. I left that house with no anger in my chest, just peace. Because I didn't walk away from the table. I built my own. And now, I decide who gets to sit at it. If this story moved you, hit the like button, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Because in this channel, the underestimated always rise.